I can pretty clearly recall when weed started to become a problem for me. I can pretty clearly recall when smoking weed, consuming THC products started to feel more like a chore than it did an activity that I enjoyed. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about that. If you're new to the channel, my name is Dr. Frank. I'm the founder of AddictionMindset Recovery Coaching, where we help people quit nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content. So subscribe if you need help with that stuff. Weed became a problem for me, and it wasn't when I decided to start smoking black market carts and getting hooked on street carts. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. There was a point in my life where smoking weed became really a habit. Yes, it was an addiction, first and foremost for me. Yes, I had a dependence upon it, but it felt like it was something that I just routinely had to do. It became a habit. And this is something that happens with cannabis, and I think it's very important to understand this. You have two kind of reward systems in your brain. You have the dopamine-driven reward system, and then you have this habit-driven system. And each of these systems determine how we are going to carry out or what actions we're going to carry out in our day-to-day life. So let's say, for example, that you smoke a little bit of weed. Initially, you get some dopamine hits, and your brain says, oh, I like that dopamine. That's a nice reward, so I want you to go do that behavior over again. So you go and do it, and you keep doing it over and over and over again until weed is an everyday part of your life. And now you're smoking just like I was, and you're not feeling so good anymore. You're not really, you're not even getting those dopamine hits anymore, because actually you might feel the opposite. You feel like crap. So what's happened here? This is where weed has switched from a dopamine pathway to a habit pathway. And now you're just habitually doing this process, even though it gives you no joy, even though it gives you no pleasure. Maybe at one point early on it did, but not here, not at this point. And it's interesting because cannabis, and you guys can Google this, just type in your endocannabinoid system and habit formation, seems to play a huge role in people's day-to-day habits and the formation of those habits. Very fascinating. The habit formation loop, the things that trigger habits and sustain habits, seems to be greatly influenced by your endocannabinoid system. Weed impacts your endocannabinoid system because THC directly binds to receptors in that system. And I think this makes weed particularly problematic. If we're screwing around with the system in our body that's responsible for habit formation, I could see how this gets dangerous. Now, I'll tell you how it got dangerous for me, but real quick. I understand that a lot of people have used weed medicinally and gotten away from other bad things like opioids and alcohol and cigarettes, and that's awesome. If that's you, that's great. This doesn't apply to you. For me, when I was struggling with nicotine addiction, adult media content addiction, right, and then THC addiction, I could not break away from really nicotine or adult media until I kicked weed. And once I kicked weed out of my life, quitting nicotine didn't seem so bad. Quitting watching adult media content didn't seem so bad. Like a lot of things, I started exercising again a lot more. Like a lot of habits in my life suddenly started to change. And I linked the video below to a psychologist who was talking about this. And he said, listen, we find in people with THC addiction that they have a really hard time changing other bad habits in their life. And he says, once they quit the THC, we notice that they're able to start making a lot of positive changes to things that were once bad habits in their life. They're able to get rid of those things. And while I was listening to him speak, I thought, oh my gosh, I experienced this on firsthand. Quitting weed for me was the start of quitting nicotine. That was the start of quitting porn. That was the start of exercising again. That was the start of having, a cleaner room, a cleaner car, better hygiene, all these things that were once bad habits, better nutrition. I really related a lot to this. If you guys are in a position right now where you're smoking weed and you're not getting any pleasure from it, and it feels like a chore, something that is just a drain, a mental drain, a physical drain, something that you really don't want to be doing, just like when your mom used to tell you had to do your chores and you didn't want to be doing them, you really have to reconsider your relationship with weed. You really have to reconsider it. And I would challenge you to look around at other aspects of your life, other bad habits that you may have, and ask yourself, is weed the glue that's keeping all these bad habits, that's keeping you tied to all these bad habits? Maybe it's not. Maybe this doesn't apply to you at all, and that's okay because we're all very different. How we all respond to weed is very different. Our life circumstances are all very, very different things. But if that's you, I think today is a great day to consider quitting and just seeing, because you owe it to yourself, what other things in your life might change? What other things in your life might improve if you quit? Guys, let me know in the comments below. Does this relate to you guys? Is this something you can think of? Have you ever been at a point during THC addiction where it was no longer running on that dopamine pathway, but maybe more so on that habit pathway? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear. And for those of you struggling with THC addiction, follow me into the next video where I talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts of quitting cannabis. I'll see you guys there.